Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I am very pleased to introduce today's second demo of the day with Administrate, how Siemens Healthineers automates instructor-led training. We have John Peebles, the CEO of Administrate here, and he is going to guide us through their demo today. I'm going to just pass it right over to John.
All right, thank you very much. It's great to be here. Excited to share this journey that our customer Siemens Healthineers has went on over the last couple of years. And I am broadcasting to you from Edinburgh, Scotland. I know people are tuning in from all over the world. And, maybe if there's other people from other interesting places, feel free to pop that in the chat. And I've got a colleague of mine that's also going to be monitoring chat for things like questions and so forth as we go through this. So happy to be interactive. And before we jump into the demo, I just want to give a little bit of overview and a little bit of context because what we're going to be talking about today is a little bit unusual and maybe a little bit different than what we've seen before. So I'm going to share my screen here. And this is a statement that we make that we see lots of people identifying with that are running large amounts of classroom training. So just for context, again, Siemens Healthineers in particular is running hundreds and hundreds of classes every month. Most of our customers are running several thousand classes a year at a minimum. And these classroom trainings can be done either live in a classroom or via Zoom, like we're on today, or often increasingly a hybrid approach of going back and forth. But in all cases, it's an administrative nightmare. Do you see what we did there? This is a thing, okay? And see, here's some of the challenges that we're talking about. So, planning the training requires things like rooms and instructors and so forth to be assigned. That's a scheduling challenge before you even get to the point where you're ready to schedule the class. Then, when you're trying to build out a complex schedule that might involve, hundreds and hundreds of events in a month, you've got to kind of play this game of Tetris or puzzle solving in order to make things work for you and your organization in the most efficient way. Communications is a real drag and can really take lots of time in order to get it right, in order to make it personalized, in order to make it timely. That's a huge challenge. And ultimately, even when you get through these first three hurdles and you've got the training schedule, the right people are attending, the right people are instructing, and so forth, something's going to happen. An instructor's going to get sick, or a classroom will no longer be available, or a resource that you need won't be there. And these things happen, life happens. And usually we hear from customers that sometimes the schedule gets busted, by 9:15 on a Monday morning. So these are familiar challenges. And the way that we solve it is we built our platform to specifically solve this challenge of classroom training and managing it at scale. And how do we do this? Well, we're going to go through kind of four key things that we'll show you today. One is around planning, making sure that you have reusable templates, scheduling, providing you support when you're going through that scheduling operation, how to communicate with your folks, automating that, and then ultimately how to resolve problems when they crop up. Okay. And so ultimately, what tends to happen at this point in the conversation, people are like, so you're an LMS, basically. And the answer is no, we are not. And LMSs are great at many things. They are particularly great at e-learning. And the reason for that is because we're all kind of familiar with this process, right? To put out a e-learning bit of content or a course that is self-directed. And you go through and you create your content, and maybe if you're selling your training, you price it and so forth, the delivery details, metadata, what certification you're going to earn, all that stuff. And then you publish the course within your LMS, and then you add students and however those students come in. But that fundamental thing of the published course may or may not change for months or years in some cases. And that's one of the huge benefits of e-learning, right? Is that you don't have to go through and redo everything all the time. But that's not what happens with classroom training. Instead, what happens with classroom training is you got to do all of that stuff around the content and the pricing, delivery, and whatever. But you also have to make sure that the right resources are in place, the right locations are available, personnel are added, that they're available, communications are sent out. because it's not just one link to click and log in. Many times, often you have to go to different places. Siemens in particular they sell very specialized equipment, things like blood analyzers and so forth. These machines need to be available and ready to go, and you may not be using the machines in every session, and you might go to different rooms as a result. And so all of that stuff has to happen. And once you publish the course and add the students, you're not done when the course ends, because the next time you run that class, you have to do all of that all over again. And so what we're going to show you today is how Administrate can automate that process and make sure that you don't have to re-enter all this stuff all the time like you would with a traditional LMS. And in fact, many customers like Siemens were using spreadsheets prior to getting us in. We like to joke that our biggest competitor is Microsoft because they make Microsoft Excel. So with a system like Administrate, and this is what we'll be wanting to show you, is we think in terms of templates. You build a template, then you go through and choose the things that you need to think about that time that you're running that class, and you schedule it and you add students, and you only have to do that bit one time instead of every time like you would with a traditional LMS. And so when you think about what is it that we do, these are the things that a learning management system does, right? E-learning, course progress, learner interface, all that great stuff. Where we really focus is kind of the piece of the puzzle or the piece of the iceberg that is hidden from a learner traditionally, which is all the stuff that we sweat in the background, right? Things like, resource management and reporting and learning paths that are very complicated and all of that stuff that happens. And that's where we play. And a great question coming in from Derek, which is how would Administrate be utilized within our LMS? Well, the answer to that typically is that we would actually work alongside your LMS. So most of our customers have at least one LMS. All of them have at least one LMS. Many of them have multiple LMSs. Administrate will work alongside, and we will manage the classroom portion of that operation, and then the LMS focuses on the e-learning. And there's some great integrations that we can do. In fact, my colleague will paste some resources into the chat throughout the presentation today, where you can do deeper dives and all this stuff. So the ultimate goal here is not only to have a much better running, much more well-oiled system, but it's also to save tons of time. So on average, we're going to save a typical training administrator 90% of their workload through all this automation. And that means that time can be reinvested back into building more training and better training and getting that training to the right people at the right time. And so this is what we tend to see, which is you take that time, you invest it, and many of our customers on average will deliver 40% more trainings over the next year. Siemens in particular, I think they 4x the volume of the training that they could manage with the same team just by automating things that were taking time for them. And that's obviously a huge success. So our promise very quickly before we dive in the demo is that within 90 days, we can usually take a whack at 80 to 90% of this workload and get it automated. Within 1 year, we can then start to integrate with other systems that you might have, like Cornerstone with Derek on the chat. And then ultimately in the future, you've got a foundation that you can build on top of, and it becomes a really, really great thing and drives huge ROI for customers. So I want to take you through some core concepts today in this demo. Course templates, classroom scheduling, communications and tasks and how we think about those, and then when things go wrong, how do you resolve those, okay? And before I jump into the detail of the system, I want to talk briefly about what is a course template. This is a fundamental concept that is really important that does not exist in any LMS out there. And that is, the best analogy I can come up with is my niece is my youngest niece has just turned 5, but when she was 2 or 3, my sister had a toy like this that you can see on your screen, and it was a bit of wood in the middle, and it had all these shapes cut out, and then there are all these wooden blocks of different shapes. And you'd sit down on the floor with her, and you'd be like, let's try to get the star shape to fit through this star opening or star hole. And this is in effect what a course template is like within Administrate. That is, we're going to go through and we're going to say, in order to run a class. Now, we take this poll pretty frequently at Administrate with our own team. It's like, what's the craziest, coolest class that you've seen from a customer recently? And one of the examples I always use is we've got a customer that has a class. They're doing health and safety training. A lot of their customers are folks that operate oil rigs and things like that. And so they actually have a class where you jump into a helicopter and it's suspended above a pool, and you've got your life preservers on and everything, and then they drop the helicopter. They set the helicopter on fire, and then they drop it in the pool, and you have to swim out from the underwater on fire helicopter, right? And that class, if you think about it, in order to run that class, you need to know a whole bunch of things. You need to make sure that there are students with prerequisites that, you can't go in this class unless you've, certified that you can swim, for example. You have to have access to the pool. The helicopter has to be free. You have to have the gas, ready to set the thing on fire. All of those things need to be put in place. And that's what we want to bake into and build into this course template, so that when it comes time to schedule this class, I am actually narrowing my focus down to just the things that I need and the decisions I need to make. And I'm not worried about figuring out and reinventing the wheel or pulling open a drawer to find the written down requirements and checklists and so forth. That's what Administrate does. Okay. Um, and so, yeah, let's jump over to the demo here. Now, I am logged into a instance of Administrate, right? This is our demo instance. This is the dashboard where a bunch of stuff is happening. We're going to come back to this, and where we're going to go first is to course templates. In fact, I'm going to do that. I'm going to pull up my course templates. Now, these are just demo examples of a whole bunch of different courses, and I'm going to go into cybersecurity fundamentals. Okay. Now, it's important to understand we are working on the pattern here, that wooden block with the various shapes. We are not actually scheduling a class right this minute. Instead, what we're doing is we're filling out all the information that you might need to describe this class, okay? So in this example, there's a lot of information here. Many of these fields are custom fields that customers add or remove, or they don't need them, things like categories and so forth. There's a whole bunch of detail that you can go into here. Instead, just think of it, every time we want to run this class, we want it to have the title of this, we want to have a code and so forth. And that's great. And I get that information entered in the system, and then I move over to personnel, right? And tasks. And so you can see right here, I'm starting to build out a list, a roster of instructors that are approved to take this class. And believe it or not, at scale, at Siemens-like scale, or some of our other customers that are similar, they will have hundreds and hundreds of instructors. Many of these instructors are not full-time employed by the training team. They are SMEs and so forth. And it's difficult to even understand who is available and who is qualified and who has been certified to teach this class. And so just getting that stuff put together and organized is a huge part of the time savings. And we haven't even really gone to the scheduling aspect yet. Workflow groups are another really, really popular piece of Administrate. And I'll dive over here in just a second. I'm going to go into task workflows. And what I can do here is I can actually say, things like I can build out a workflow of things that need to happen prior to a classroom training. So I can say, free cyber security checklist, right? Or checks, right? And I can say, make sure that the software is updated. And then what I can do is I start working in terms of offsets. And what I mean by that is I say, I need this to be done at least 2 days before, not after, before the event starts, okay? And this could be a call, it could be an email, and I can define these various task types and so forth. And I can even assign it to myself, right? And what that means is because I am not actually building out a task right this minute, I'm building out a templated task. What it means is that when I go to schedule this class, the computer will automatically lay out all of my tasks in the pattern that I have specified. And I don't have to do math in my head. I don't have to remember to do this. I don't have to go and assign them to people or anything like that. And so this type of stuff saves tons and tons of time. Okay. And I would then add that task workflow to this template for this class, and away we go. So hopefully that makes sense. Content, you can do a whole bunch of things here, documents, you can have e-learning content and so forth. Some folks use Administrate as an LCMS. Some folks don't, but the document management potential here is really, really good. A lot of times when you have heavily regulated training, like in healthcare, like with Siemens Healthineers, they want to be able to know exactly which version of which documents were put in front of students and so forth. And so that is a very key thing that we can do. And Mario is asking, are you able to integrate with Workday? The answer is yes. I'm happy to report. So we've got an integration with Workday and in a couple of different ways. So Workday Learning in particular, though. So, there's a bunch of Docebo, Workday, Thought Industries, so a whole bunch of different systems in Cornerstone. Basically, we have designed our platform to be heavily or highly integratable because every customer has an LMS, and that's a key thing. Okay, so I've got my basic info, I've got my personnel, I've got my content. Now I am ready to go in and build out what a schedule would look like. Okay, and I'm basically going to say this is a class. We're going to default to a 9 a.m. start and a 5 p.m. end because that's about all our students can handle. This class could be daily or weekly, right? And I'm laying out the pattern. And this looks complicated, and we'll go through and train this with you if you become a customer. But basically, we're laying out the pattern of what we'd like to see. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or sometimes in college, I really like the Tuesday, Thursday pattern of classes, right? And there's a bunch of business rules and things, but basically what happens is I lay out my pattern, I can generate out the sessions. And the key thing here is that you can see, instead of saying it's going to be, Monday, April 29th, 2024, I am instead laying out a pattern of day 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is the start and end time. Okay, and I can customize this, and I can make some of this I can do a whole bunch of different things, but we're just trying to explain to the computer, here is the way that we think about this schedule, and ideally this is how this class would run. Okay. Next, we have resources. Now, I've got things like rooms and laptops and computer labs defined here in my demo instance, but this is where you would build out, customers build out their own resource types. So this can be anything that you use on a day-to-day basis that's important to be there for training. So in the examples I gave before, helicopters and so forth, those are important. Siemens has a whole bunch of different specialized equipment that they would need to make sure is there and ready and available. And a lot of our customers will actually use the resource management within Administrate to do things like serial number tracking and maintenance intervals and all of the types of things that they want to store with this equipment that they need, whether it's maintenance or some sort of updates or whatever. They've now got a spot where they can store all this information. It doesn't have to live in yet another spreadsheet. So looking at the chat, loving the questions, folks. We got a question from Richard. Can you customize the content using portions of different courses? Absolutely. So you can build out courses that take 6 months to a year, or you can say, look, these are very focused. This is a 1-week course or something like that. And then you can actually assemble these courses into different learning paths. And so it can get very, very interesting and complicated if you like to. Okay, you can then go, I'm going to not save my changes. You can go and do things like selling your training. So Siemens in particular, they are not selling the bulk of their customer training, but many of our healthcare technology and med tech companies are selling the bulk of their training. And so that's a big thing. And then you can find achievements and define all that. And what that means is that then I can come back and so many tabs. I can now go and schedule a class using that template that I just built out, okay? So as I'm loading up all of my events in Administrate parlance are basically classes that have been scheduled using a course template. And I can go and I can create an event. And this will be a public event. We also support private, but in this case, public. And I'm going to say I want to run that cybersecurity fundamentals course, right? And watch when I click this. By clicking this, now the computer has started to fill in things like the code and the titles and all that stuff that I was typing in before. And we have a philosophy here, which is we trust our, the administrators and the teams, but we want to template as much as possible. But things are always going to change, right? And potentially you'll need to do something different one day. So you always have the ability to override this with the correct permissions. The system's not going to restrict you. It'll warn you, but it won't restrict you if things kind of go awry. So I've said what course I want to run. Then I click which date, and you can see here, this is a little bit of just heads up decision support that we're providing you. We are highlighting the pattern of days that this course would default to. Remember the Monday, Wednesday, Friday? And the preferred start is actually highlighted over here. And that's just a very easy, quick way for me to go in and say, yeah, we're going to do that, start on the 6th. And now what it has done is it's generated out my sessions for me. I don't have to type anything. I go over and these locations can be defined by you. I say I want to run in Atlanta. And again, if I'm selling training, things like taxes and locales and time zones, whatever, all get set automatically. And then all I have to do is hit that create button and away we go. Okay, so right there, I've gone from having to type out pages and pages of information to not only being able to schedule this in just a couple of clicks, but also I've had some help in deciding what the best days and so forth are running because I baked that into my course template. Okay. And that's kind of the core mechanic. And there's a whole bunch more detail here, and we'd love to link up with you and do a more in-depth demo if that's of interest. But that is the fundamental piece around those course templates. Okay. So the other thing that I want to do and show you is, all right, we've got the course templates and the resources defined. Now that stuff is under control. I want to show you a little bit about how we think in terms of communications. And actually, we did an entire in-depth session on this a couple of weeks ago that you can see on our website. My colleague Rob will paste the link out there at some point, where myself and one of our product managers went through and really talked about the power of communications at Administrate. Okay. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in and look at kind of two things, right? The first is I'm going to look at a communication template. Okay. Now we support both email and SMS modes of delivery, and some customers use email, some use SMS, many and most use both. It often depends on what area of the world you're operating in. I think a lot of our customers that operate on Asia and the Middle East, they have kind of fed back that students out there tend to like getting text messages more than folks in the West. But you can figure out which mode of delivery, and you don't have to stick to one. But let's just say I wanted to come in here and build out a course reminder. We're all familiar with these, right? I'm going to click in here into one that's already built. And you can see, I basically have a name of a template, but I've got an audience, which in this case is students, right? And you can have different audiences. So things like students are an audience, instructors are an audience, staff are an audience, and so forth. And then I come down here and I can start building out this template. Now you can put HTML in here if you've got your branded templates, whatever. This one happens to be plain text. But one of the things that you'll notice, in addition to this formatting stuff, is just right off the bat, I'm saying dear, and then I've got this delegate.contact.first_name with these squiggly braces. Now, this is a web templating engine called Jinja. Okay, it's used by web designers. You can check it out. It's open source. We use it in our product. And what this means is that you have very high control over exactly what you're doing with these emails. Okay. So for example, if I were to say, dear delegate first name, dear John, which would be me in this case, I can also go into our merge field picker and you can see all the various things for that I have at my disposal. So pretty much every field within Administrate is exposed and I can grab it. So if I wanted to, let's find last name, do over contact. And yeah, here we go, last name. If I were to pick that and hit add, what that does is that plops that merge code right in here and I'm doing a mail merge, okay? And I'm building out this template, and you can see I can even do things like formatting. Jinja has things like loops and if statements and so forth. And we help you with this as part of the onboarding. But the cool thing is anybody in your marketing team, or if you've got folks that are familiar with this, they can learn it and you can get up and running and you can start customizing this stuff. In addition to this customization, you can also add in automatically generated iCal attachments and all that stuff. And what I'm just trying to give you is that you get a high level of control. Localization, multiple languages are supported and so forth. And ultimately, you can then preview the email and you're done with your template. Now that's kind of half the battle, right? I've defined what I want to send out to folks. But the rest of it is I need to then figure out when I'm going to send out and why, okay? And so I'm coming in here into the triggers portion of this. So we've got the template, but now we want to add a trigger and fire a template when we can. And so if I were to come in here, I would basically say, reminder, email, and I start getting options of who do I want to target, right? Do I want to make this fire on every event, just on specific courses, just on a specific event? Sales opportunities. If I'm selling my training, we won't get into that. There's a whole bunch of other things that we're not going to get into. But basically, if I wanted to fire this on all events, I type in some other stuff and I say what template I want to use. In this case, course reminder. And then I come down to the trigger settings. And again, this is just like the tasks. I'm templating out that I want this to go 3 days before the start of the event, and I want to send it to my students, okay? But maybe I want to send it to everybody, right? Or have a couple booking contacts, things like that. It doesn't really matter. And then what happens is I will, we tell people to set this to automatic no to start with, because then the system will queue up the emails, you can review them and so forth, and then you can let it rip once you get comfortable with this. A lot of power here, and it's stuff that what's important about this is not so much that you get to automate all this stuff, although it helps. You also get to improve the product that your learners are experiencing, because now instead of getting one email reminder that takes you a lot of time and effort to do, you can send out 5, 10, you can interlace that with text and so forth. You can do reminders during courses, after the class ends, year after the class ends, to remind people that their certification is coming up for renewal, all that type of stuff, okay? So I realize I'm going fast. Again, happy to go more in depth, and we've got resources out there for you. So now I wanted to kind of get back. All right, we've got our course templates. We've now made sure that scheduling something is much easier and faster, because I just have to put in a couple of things like the course template and the date I want things to start. And we've seen how all my automation or all my communications are automatically flowing to the right people at the right time. All right, that's all great. But stuff is still going to happen day to day. And that's where this kind of issues or problems dashboard comes into play. And what we've got here, we've got 2 key things, and we've also done a whole in-depth thing. And I think actually tomorrow we're going to go more in depth to this with a product manager. Again, check it out on LinkedIn Live if you like. But I come in here, and basically the system is identifying and surfacing key things to me that I need to know as a training administrator. And you can see right here, there's a bunch of different things. Like this class that's kicking off in just a few days, we're missing resources. My fill rate is low. I can configure this, by the way. So I can say like, I need my fill rate to be at a certain threshold. Otherwise it'll warn me. I've got instructor issues with this particular class. And what I can do is I can just click in here, dive into this event. I can see on my dashboard up here, here's where all my problems are. And I can come down here and look, all right, I've got my personnel, that's okay. But I think on my outline, yeah, I'm missing required resources. I can also see that tasks are completed and so forth. It's just a ton of information that's getting pushed to you at the right time. So that's kind of thing number 1. And then thing number 2 is, one of the most difficult things to manage are people and people's calendars. And so one of the things that we're really excited about that we've released very recently is the fact that you can now integrate instructor calendars with Administrate, and Administrate can read off of instructors' calendars and see their availability. And what this lets us do is that in real time, we can then say, look, Mallory has got 4 conflicts here, and they're all listed right here. And I can go in, I can kind of figure out, oh, what is the conflict? And this might be a class that they're teaching, that Mallory's teaching, or it could be that she scheduled a dentist appointment, right? And there's a privacy setting there, so I don't necessarily get to see all the details if Mallory doesn't want me to. But this type of stuff basically surfaces, and I can either a one-click replace, because Administrate will recommend that replacement based on the course template again, or I can go in and deal with that problem myself, right? So basically same thing, and you can kind of see just how this works. And so, I mean, hit replace, there we go. Now that by replacing that one session with Floria, I've now solved 2 of my problems, and it just took a half second. I got alerted to the issue. I logged in, and in 1 second, I clicked and took the replacement. And I like to say that, it kind of reminds me of Delta Airlines. If my flight gets canceled, they offer to rebook me. So yeah, those kind of key things are what we really wanted to share with you today. And hopefully that has made sense. It's been a whirlwind tour, but I'm happy to kind of take some more questions or dive into a bit more detail. But I wanted to make sure that we had a few minutes for some Q&A. So I'll pause right there for just a second and see if anybody's got any questions.
Well, we are at time right now, so I think that we are going to wrap up this demo for today, knowing that the Administrate team can reach out to John and Rob. Will be able to address some questions that we didn't get to. I saw Rob was dropping in links along the way to dive deeper into some of the things that you were talking about. So thank you so much to John and the Administrate team.